All right, folks, so we're downloading the file Google Docs.xlsm. Our whole purpose today is to look at kind of tips, tricks, and techniques to be able to integrate between Excel and Google Docs. Specifically, we'll be dealing with the idea of a Google form. So if you set up a form to collect information from people, you want to be able to bring that data straight into Excel to do analysis and have that happen automatically. We're going to see how to do that. We're going to see how to take information that we have in Excel and push it up to a Google form. You might do this because you've got a bunch of data here that you just need to get there, or the more likely reason is you've got some kind of automatic process happening in Excel. Maybe you're collecting data from a web page, and it's going to run for hours and hours and hours, and when the data comes in, you want to just push it up to a Google Sheet and have it there to be able to share with someone else or be able to store it there for whatever reason. And so we'll see how to do that, and we'll talk about some issues dealing with security in this environment. So let's get down to business. We'll begin by creating a Google form. So I'm hoping you all have a Google account. If not, kind of sit back and watch the show because you won't be able to do anything today without a Google form. Well, the truth is, you could probably, I guess if I published my stuff from Excel, you could push stuff to the Google form and download from the Google form. So even if you don't have a Google account, you'll be okay. But we're going to start off by creating a Google account. So I'm going to go to drive.google.com. Myself logged in. I'm logged in as me. That looks great. I'm going to go to the folder that I want to work in. If you don't already have, a folder structure, just create a new folder. I'm going to go find my Information Systems Department folder. I'm not quite sure how these are organized. Here it is. I got a VBA folder in that. VBA form. Here's all the stuff I did last. We'll go back and I'll do VBA form 2 right here. So new folder VBA form 2. I think it's probably just healthy to have a folder on your Google Drive where you've got where we're going to put the stuff that we're building. Empty folder in Google Drive. If you have a Google account and you're not quite here yet, raise your hand. I don't want to run on before you're here. So do you need help or you're just getting that? You got this. So just new folder, nothing in it, and you're ready to create a form. Okay, so I was kind of surprised a couple years ago when I asked, how many people have created a Google form. I'm like, almost everyone did. So I don't ask that question anymore. Instead, I ask, how many of you have not created a Google form before? A few of you? Okay. So it's a really handy and it's really easy, and let's go ahead and see how to do it. So I'm going to click on New, and it's not one of the default ones, but I click on More, I can make a Google form. So I'm making a Google form. And since we are now in the period of time when we're thinking about course evaluations, why don't we go ahead and do some kind of auxiliary course evaluation. We're going to let you choose the questions you really want to evaluate your professors on. So form, we'll call this a professor evaluation. And then we'll come in here and I'll go ahead and give it a title so I don't forget it. I'm going to click on Untitled Form up here, and it'll just give it the name that I've titled my form. So that's fine. We'll put that in automatically. Come down here to Untitled Question, give it a question. Probably put professor name. You should know who you're evaluating. Very good. I'll click on the little plus sign here to add another question. All right. What would you really like to evaluate your professors on? Last time someone said quality of jokes. Quality of jokes. I think linear scale. Based on me knowing what I'm going to want to do with this, quality of jokes, we'll go ahead and do that as a linear scale. It'll be a little problem for us later on, but I think it'll be okay. So quality of jokes, that's one. Put labels here. We're going to say low quality. And, let's see. No. Who's the guy in Ferris Bueller? Who's the teacher who's like Bueller? Ben Stein. We'll put Ben Stein at one end of the spectrum. How do you spell Stein? And then who's like a really famous comedian? Seinfeld's the guy that comes to mind, but you may not know him. You know Seinfeld? How do you spell Seinfeld? Same thing, E-I? Ben Stein to Jerry Seinfeld scale. New question. All right, come up with another thing you want to evaluate me on. Hairstyle.
Typos?
Yeah, the typo count. That's wonderful. Hairstyle. S-T-Y-L-E. Again, let's see if we can. Hairstyle quality. Let's see if it'll. I'm just kind of amazed that Google is able to kind of guess at what the scale. Guess multiple choice. I'm going to go back to this linear scale, same way. Okay, hairstyle quality at the low end of the spectrum. Donald Trump. Is that right? And at the high end of the spectrum, I don't know. I have no idea. Say it again. John. S-T-A-M-O-S. You're flushing over the mere mention. Okay. Let's do at least one more, and if someone else wants to throw another one out, you can. What else? Speed of lecture. Appropriateness of. How do we say that? Okay, speed of lecture. Cadence. Is that how you spell cadence? If someone says, like spelling competency, I'm not putting that one in. Is it EI or something? Are we okay? Really? Cadence. Same thing. Linear scale. Okay, way too slow. What's something that's really slow? A snail? What's that? Okay, and then what's something that's really fast? What's something that's too fast?
Very out. Flash.
Oh, why don't we just put the flash? The flush. Okay, and then we'll add one more that will just be notes. Comments. Okay. So, and you could go on. Google has done a tremendous job. I only learned today that there's this one here, multiple choice grid, which is the thing I always disliked about Google Forms when I first looked at it. Each question was independent, but now you can put a bunch of questions, one measure across the top, and fill it in. It's really quite nice. Okay, so we have a very nice professor evaluation. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to say something about where the responses go. So I'll come over here to responses, and I'm going to click on this little thing that looks like it must be the flag of some lesser-known European country, but it's just indicating that it's a spreadsheet. So I want to put this onto a spreadsheet. You want to make a new one or select an existing one? We put it onto a new one. That's the default here. We'll say create. And it should create a spreadsheet with the same name, Professor Evaluation Responses. Here's where all that data is going to come into from the form. Very nice. Okay, I have no responses yet. But here, let me give you a chance to make some responses here. It would be helpful, in fact, if you put some responses in here, because I need some data to work with. So I'm going to click on the little eyeball here to preview it. It will give me a really hideous URL. But I'm going to take that URL over to the Google URL shortener, goo.gl. I will plug in that URL here. And as long as I get a URL that doesn't have an O or a 0 or an I or an L or a 1, I'll be okay. Those are just difficult. People won't quite know what to type. But this one looks pretty good. So I'm going to publish this URL to you. You can type that in right now. Yeah, and that will take you to this. That will take you to this form. But we're going to have 3 different URLs. So I'm going to come to Content, and make a new page, and I'm going to call it URLs. For Google Docs. I'll put 614. The other one, the one without the 614 on it, was from the last hour. So here is a link to fill in data. And publish. We'll put a couple more URLs up there before we're done. Anyway, I should be able to come here and put in a professor's name. I had a professor, his name was Kohler, I think. K-O-H-L-E-R. There's an H in there somewhere. And he was Ben Stein, 100%. Hairstyle wasn't too bad. It wasn't anything fabulous. Cadence, he was on the snail side of this the comments. Glad he is now retired. I'm recording this. I hope he doesn't see it. It's a different color than you're thinking. Okay. We hit submit, and we get a little thing that says your response has been recorded. That's very nice. I can go make another response if I want to. But I should be able to see that response and perhaps someone else's response already coming into this form. We'll see it coming in right now. Spelling ability is questionable. Yeah, what's that?
Where did you post the link?
Oh, so the link is over here in Learning Suite under Content. So if you go to Content, there should be, I did the same thing last class, and so there's one for last class, and there's one that says 614 for this class. Okay. Should be able to copy that right. What else? Governor Allen, awesome class. He was the worst. Oh, that's someone else. Okay. So, the Governator. Someone put that exact same symbol in the last class. I don't know what it means. Oh, it's a heart. I see it now. Okay, that's better. Yeah, my daughters were doing something with an X and a D. You seen this one? It's like a smile that's so big you're squinting to make the smile or something. Put it in here. Capital X, capital D. Big smile that you're squinting. Teenage girls. Last fast time. My girls generally get along quite well with each other. They're less than 2 years apart. Sunday, they were picking on each other. They were just picking. And I was befuddled. I had no idea what was going on. And then about halfway through church, I realized, oh, they're grumpy because they're fasting. That's what it is. If I would have understood that in the morning, it would have been like, I wouldn't have been so curious. What I really needed was the alligator hunter there in class. I mean, there in the kitchen, that's what. Here we have the adolescent woman female. Once a month, she fasts for 24 hours. And during that time, she becomes the fiercest predator on the planet. That's what I needed. I'm going to poke her with a stick. Oh, look out, she's angry. All right. That can improve jokes quality because I sure got a quality of. Oh no, quality's doing pretty well up there. So maybe that will decrease the joke quality. Okay, so far so good. Now, it is possible with VBA to say I want to become an authenticated consumer of a Google document. To be able to say, here's my credentials. Give me something that is not publicly available, but that is crazy advanced. VBA is not really, it was designed in the 1990s. It wasn't really designed to do anything with the internet. The little internet stuff that we get has kind of come later. And to be able to do this, authenticated interaction with Google is complex stuff. We're not going to do that. We're going to see a shortcut that makes it really, really easy. So, if this is data that I don't mind making publicly available, at least that folks could see it, in other words, not secure. Not that they wouldn't be able to find it. In fact, if I know the URL that I'm filling the form out in, there is no way for me to look at this URL and to figure out the URL of where this data might be published. But let's go ahead and publish this data. So I'm going to come over here to my worksheet, and under File, I'm going to choose Publish to Web. Publish the entire document, sure. Entire document. Oh, it's already there. And I'll just say publish. Are you sure you want to do that? Yes, I do. Yes, I am. And it will give me a URL. This URL cannot be inferred from the URL that I go to the link with. So that's nice. But once I have this link, I should be able to use this just to create a web query. I don't even have to use Internet Explorer. I can do this with a web query wizard. So let's go back to our worksheet now. And with this URL, which I am going to post into Learning Suite as a second URL, here is link link to download data. And save. So armed with that URL, we should be able to come over to, and again, you can get that off Learning Suite under Content. Should be able to come to Excel. Oh, open up the file we downloaded. Right down to my desktop, no doubt. I mean, download. And we've got the first sheet here. It's just called Web Query. There's no Web Query here yet. We've got to make a Web Query, but we can do that. So I'm just going to come to my Data tab, get external data from web, paste in that URL. Here's the data, beautiful, and I'll just say import. Put it in A1, that's a great place to put it. So it's really kind of nice that if that data is published, we can just pull that in with the Web Query Wizard. Requires almost no effort. We've got here, for some reason it's hidden column. Is it hidden this column or just made it really small? Oh, it's just made it, kind of shrunk down the first column, but it's there. What happens if I refresh it? It's going to shrink it down again. Let me try it. Data, refresh all. Yeah, it shrinks down that first column. I'm not sure why it doesn't. But we can put some code in that will back that off. Timestamp. Okay, so far so good. Last time we worked with web queries, we just recorded ourselves doing it. We didn't know how to do anything. It was like the second day of class. But now we're a little more familiar with working with objects and methods and properties. So let's just go write a statement that will refresh this web query. It will be pretty easy to do. I'm going to come to my code, Alt F11. And in modules, there's a module 1. We've got a few things set up here. So here's get data from Google. I'm going to go ahead and declare a variable called URL. Actually, I'm going to call it link. Dim link as a string. Link equals, I'll plug in that URL that you're going to get off of Learning Suite, the whole one for link to get data. All right, and now let's think about how we're going to get to that query. Well, you may remember when you recorded that code, you were working with something called a query table. Query table, a collection of all query tables on a worksheet. Now, I have named this worksheet WQ, kind of short for web query. So web query is what it says on the tab, but the actual name is right here, WQ. So in my immediate window, I'm just going to say, I'm just curious to see. I want to make sure I can get to that collection. So I've got a worksheet called WQ. And there's a collection called query tables. And I just want to ask for the count. And if this executes, I'll know that I at least have identified the code correctly. It's very good. So there's query tables. There's only one, presumably. That first one is the one I'm after, and I'll just look for the connection. Yeah, so there it is. So that's what the connection looks like. It turns out that we use query tables for things besides web queries. We use them for database queries and probably other kinds of queries that I'm not familiar with. And so the connection starts off by saying, hey, this is a web query. This is going to be a URL. So it's got to say URL, semicolon, and then has the URL that we're after. And so, armed with that little bit of information, I'm going to come down here to my code. I've established the link. Now I'm just going to say, hey, the first query table on that web query sheet, that connection is going to equal URL semicolon concatenated with link. So I've got my link set up with that whole URL. I'll bring that in. That will establish that and make sure that that's the connection on that URL. And that's what it is already, so why am I changing it? And the answer is, we are going to use the same web query to do multiple different calls, at least 2. And so we'll be popping in and out the connection to change what it is. Questions? So even if you haven't created a Google form, you should be able to come to Learning Suite under Content and pull the link for my Google form and be able to pull that data down. Question in the back.
So what is the WQ line going to do? Is he Is this line going to run a web query?
Not yet. All we've done is we've established that we're going to set the connection. We still have to tell that query to refresh, which we can do right now. So web query that one dot refresh. And then it has the first argument background query. Do we want it to run in the background? In this case, it really doesn't matter because I'm not going to do anything after it refreshes. Or maybe I will, so I'll go ahead and say false. It's not a background query. By saying false here, it tells it wait until the query is done before it moves on to executing workbook. Oh, and why don't we, since it's making the width of that first column really small, let's go ahead and extend that out. So we'll say wq.columns 1.width equals 10 maybe? Oh, it's column width. W-I-D-T-H, column. That should set that width. I'm not quite sure why the web query is shrinking down, but that should push it back after we run it. So I'll run that. It should take a minute, well, not quite a minute, several seconds to bring that data in. And yeah, now it's giving me that data as reasonable. Question? No question? So far, kind of a lackluster day. We just did the web query. We've been doing the web query since the very beginning of class. Yeah, we saw how to connect it up to a Google form, but it's not. All we did was publish it to make it a web page, and then we consumed it through the web query. So now, what I would like to do next is I would like to say, hey, what does it take for me to be able to push data from Excel into this same form? I'm trying to get data kind of line by line into that worksheet, and we're going to take it through the door that's open by having a form on the sheet. This is going to require us to think about some things differently that we haven't thought about. So let's take a look. I want to make sure that if you're coding along with me, that you've gotten this far. Is there anyone trying to get this part to work? You want to see the whole URL?
Is that on the list?
That's the URL that's on Learning. It's the long URL that's on Learning Suite under content. Yeah, don't try to type that. We'll be here for an hour. It's case sensitive, and that O is really a 0, and is that a capital L, a lowercase l, or capital I? Anyone else?
Oh my heck.
Once you get that built here, then it will have that web query. Truth is, it doesn't matter what web query you build it. Just build on after. Anyone else? Yes.
So
I don't know.
put your cursor somewhere else.
Narrowing it down.
So let's copy that just that procedure into a new module
And see if that'll work there. If not, anyone else? I agree. See, you have the new. Change the name. Delete that one. Make just a simple procedure with nothing in it. Try that. All right. Okay, so let's say, how are we going to make this thing actually submit? To do this, by the time we get to the VBA that this takes, it's going to be not too bad. But it takes us understanding a little bit about HTTP. So I'm going to come back to the form where I'm submitting. So here's the form where I'm submitting. Go ahead and I'll submit another answer, and then we'll take a look at the results here. Right. So here, let me go ahead and put one in for one of my favorite professors, Jim Stice. He's still here. Can you have had him?
So good. Oh, I like it.
Case Stice, but the Stice brothers, they're amazing. I don't know how they all hit that family, but they're both great. Quality of jokes, they're
pretty good. Yeah.
Hairstyle quality. I don't know what you put for someone who's completely bald, but
Yeah, probably do.
I don't know. It's not a mess at all. I mean, there's not a hair. There is not a hair out of place. Cadence. Well, he wasn't the Flash. He was quick, but he wasn't absurdly quick. Comments. The only thing, well, never mind. But he's great. Okay, so fantastic.
What was the only thing?
Well, so I had him for the introduction to accounting class. It was a financial accounting class back then. It's kind of half and half now. Half financial, half finance. And after taking that class, I was like, I'm totally majoring in this. That was the last accounting class I enjoyed. It happened to you too, as you said. It was like the gateway drug. Okay. All right, so I'm going to submit this. And then I want to look at the page that it submits to. So it's submitted to this. It's submitted to this URL. Let me go ahead and copy this URL. I want to look at the URL that it went to. So here it is. As you look at this URL, do you see anything in the URL about the information that I just typed into the form? Is there anything? Is the word "great" there? Are the numbers there? Does Jim Stice show up there? It could be all encoded in this, but trust me, it's not. This is just an identifier to get me to the right place. So it's not. This form, when I submit this, there's no information in the URL about what I just submitted. Now, why is it making such a big deal about that? Would you expect it to be there? The answer is sometimes yes. Depending on the way the form is set up, I can either transmit the information from the form as a part of the URL that's making the request, or I can put it in the body of the message. So it's like these two parts. There's the header that we're sending, and then there's the body, there's the payload of what we're actually sending in the request when we make the network request to this web server. And there's two different ways, there's more, but there's two main ways that we can send information from a form. One is in the body, that's the way this form does it. The other one is in the header, it's in the request itself. And so, if we could get them to go into the request, we could just format a URL and use the web query wizard to post the data. That seems strange. Web query wizard, we think of bringing data from a web page. But all this URL is going to be a web page request that has information in it. The web server is going to get that request, record some information, and send a page back. So here's how we make the change. it's possible for the script on the back end to say, no, I'm only looking for data that's passed in the body. And so there's no guarantee that if we put the data in the request, in the request header, there's no guarantee that this is going to work. But it turns out, for Google, it works just fine. Let me show you how you would play with it. So I'm going to come over here to the one I haven't submitted yet. And we'll put another professor in here, Case Dice. I never had Kate. He wasn't on the faculty when I was a student here. Quality, I've heard him teach though. He's good. Hairstyle quality, 2,
Sure.
I think. Cadence, again 4. He's good. He's a little quick, but he's not crazy fast. Wonderful. Okay. Now before I submit this, I'm going to change this form from. I'm going to change the HTML that's here. Now, we've seen how to look at the HTML in detail, right-click and inspect element, or inspect here. And in fact, let's see. It's way up here. So just so you can kind of get the feeling that you really can change this data, this page right here says Professor Evaluation. I'm going to come here to say Stice Professor Evaluation. And it changes that page. I can close this thing, it goes away, and for all the world it looks like that's what that form says. The server sent me this page, I just changed the data that it sent after it got it. You can have some fun with this. You know, you can go to like CNN and inject yourself into a story. You know, and leave it up there and impress your mom next time, you know, she's there. Leave it up on CNN. Thought you'd like to see that page, Mom. Your son is famous. Okay, but other things we could change. Let's try it again. So I'm going to come down here onto one of these forms, or one of these elements, and inspect. And I wish I could make this part go away. Do I know how to make this part go away? Oh, I can make it smaller. That's good. Okay. And I'm going to go up until I find the form. This has to be inside a form. I'm going to go past it. I'm just going to kind of keep going up until I see form. Form, here it is. Here's the form. And we're going to see right here, here's the action. This is the page it's sending it to, but the method says something about, are we going to put the information in the body? That's what post does. Or in the header, that's what get does. I'm going to change the method from post to get. Now you might think, well, what kind of, so what? You're not changing the way the page works, you're just changing the local copy. That's right. Watch this. I've changed that to get. I am now going to submit this form, and it's going to pass now all of that form information here in the URL. Let me copy this URL. Come back to Notepad. And now this is the URL that it went. It's the same. I mean, up to this point, it's exactly the same. But now I have entry 651373124, and you can see it says Case Dice. You can see here I've given him a 5. I've given him some other numbers here, and then down here it should say wonderful. Wonderful. Okay? So now I'm going to give you this URL over here in Learning Suite. This is the link to upload data. Again, it's kind of long. We'll need to do some work with this because right now it's just going to insert another instance of this one. We've got to parameterize this and be able to read the values out and do that. We're headed that direction. But let's just get this one to run by itself first, then we'll worry about parameterizing it. Oh, we need to publish that. Save. Now you should have access to that URL. I'm going to come to my second procedure, push data to Google, dim link as a string. Link equals. Actually, I want something really similar to what I have here. I'm just going to copy the same thing. All the rest of this does is it says, set up my connection to be that link, refresh it, and make sure that first column isn't too narrow. We'll go back to that code in just a second, but let me come to my responses. I should see that case size there. I'm up here to line 31. And just in case, just so we can make sure it's not someone else working in the background, I'm going to change it from K Stice to Larry Stice, their younger brother. They don't really have a younger brother named Larry, to my knowledge, but I'll change it to something. I'll execute this. And we should have Larry Stice now showing up on the, two Larry Stices showing up here on the Google Sheet. So pushing Google to data, or pushing data to Google really is exactly like getting data from Google. We just have to give it the URL that we're interested in. So the trick that we did here was we said for this one moment, for just this one submission of the form, we're going to change this from a post form to a get form. And that's going to show us the URL that would allow us to send the information as a part of the URL. Now, all we have to do is change the URL to have in it what we want to actually post. Question?
What does you go against for like the HTML, like the HTTPS reference?
So the question is, where did I go to change that so that we could see the data in the URL? And the answer is, I came to the page, which is the response, the page that I'm getting ready to submit. I'm going to find the form itself, so I will inspect one of the form elements. Inspect. This must be nested inside the form. And so if I look up the hierarchy, I should see a form tag. So the form tag is collapsible, and I am inside that form. So if I look up, I'll see that form for sure. It won't be collapsed away somewhere else because I am nested inside it. I'm going to scroll up until I find a form tag. There it is, form. And I change the word post. I change it from post to get, G-E-T. It doesn't have to be capital, but typically it is. And that's just part of the HTTP specification. It says when you're submitting information as a part of a form, you can submit it as either post or get. There's also a put. There's also some other ones that are used almost never. Post and get are by far the main ones that are used. And technically, what it says is that if the information you're sending changes the state of the server, as this does, it records something on the server, it's supposed to be sent in the body, the way Google's doing it. If it's just a query, if it's just asking for information, you're sending parameters to ask for information, it's supposed to be sent in the URL. That's really the standard reads. But it doesn't have to be that way. It's just a convention. Now, could we use the Internet Explorer object to build a request that would go to that same place and actually build a body that puts these parameters in the body? Yes, we could. It's way more complex than what we're doing here. And since today is really about working with Google Forms, we're going to take the easy way through. Question?
Can you explain the objective of what we're doing?
Why would you ever do this? Well, here, let's get to where we can actually push some data from Excel onto that worksheet. And you may still have that question, and then I'll explain it. So right now, then, we have this URL that's pretty ugly. And I would like to parameterize it. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and make some variables here. So I'm going to do, what do we have, 5 questions? I'm just going to declare an array. Dim param, actually let's do this. Let's dim params as a new collection. I ask for the name. Yeah, we're okay with this. So I'm going to say params dot add. So the first one that we're going to add is going to be the name of the professor. So I'm going to put, instead of putting a professor's name here, why don't we go ahead and come over here to the Excel workbook. Find it. And I'll just come over here to column G. I'm just going to set these up just kind of as a little table to enter some data. Here's prof. What were our 3 questions? Jokes. Next one, hair. And cadence. And then notes, comments. And let me come here then, and I'll just put some data in here. Another professor. Remember the person I had? A professor named Howe. I don't remember him very much, really. Jokes strike me as not very good. Hair was okay. Cadence was 3 right down the middle. Comments, not memorable. Well, he's at least memorable enough for me to remember his name. Maybe not very memorable. Well, folks, I'm not sure that I have ever taught you this little trick before for working with the range object. I can refer to this now as H1, H2, H3, or whatever. But I can also name these. I'll name this one, I'll just name range, prof. This one I'll name jokes. This one I'll name hair. This one cadence. And comments. I'm sure if I click on those, they show up as their names. Now that these are named ranges, I can come back to my code, and I'll say in my collection of parameters, I'm going to add range. The first one will be range prof, just the name of the range. Dot value. Jokes, hair, cadence, and comments. Okay, so at this point, I have now just put these into these variables. I guess I could have skipped the variables altogether, just plug them in. I'm trying to think of a way that won't be just really burdensome dealing with this really long parameter. So, or doing this really long URL. So now I'm going to come and parameterize the URL. Or maybe I'll just go ahead and plug in params 1 through 5 right here in the URL. So here, Larry Stice, this is the prof, this is the first one I did. I'm going to splice this in. Quote, quote, putting in 2 quotes. Why 2 quotes? I'm terminating the first string, starting up the second string, and in the middle I'm going to concatenate in what's in my params collection. Param sub 1. Concatenate that in. You're going to see that I'm going to need to do more with these parameters than I've done so far, which is why I want to have the variables in here, so that I can manipulate them a little further outside of where I'm going. All right, here's the next entry. Here I've given it a 5. This is the first one, and so this will be params 2. I'll just go ahead and copy what I'm injecting here. I'll replace the 5 with that same. Oops. Copy the quotes and everything. I'll replace that 5 with this for param 2. Here's the next one. I'll replace that with param 3. The next one should be a number as well. Replace it with param 4. We're following this okay? And the word wonderful we're going to replace with param 5. So I've just gone through that URL, and I said everywhere that there was a text that I'm trying to actually push up there, I'm changing it with the item from my collection of parameters that holds the value that I want. Whew. And I think this is going to work okay. So let's see if we can get this one to work, and then I'll show you a little problem that we're going to have in a minute. So if we think about it, all we've done is we've changed the link to the values that we've read off the page, and we should be able to execute this and have it work. It's running, thinking about it. Looks like it's done. Come back to the web page. And I should see how now showing up. So here's how. Not memorable. So here's the one I entered. Other folks entered. So far, so good. But there's a problem. In fact, I'm kind of curious that someone got this one to go through. You need to add quotes in there somewhere. Go back and look at that one more time. So just like when we're working with, I'll get one example of so you can see. This is how it needs to look. I've highlighted everything that's replaced the value that was there. When we're working with SQL, and we're kind of building up the SQL string, in a sense, this is very similar. Right? An SQL is just it's a request for information that goes to a database server. A URL is a request for information that goes to a web server. It's kind of the same idea. There were some things we had to be careful about how we built that SQL statement. For instance, we're not allowed to put a single quote just by itself inside a single quote from the string. There are similar rules when we're working with a URL. There are some symbols that mean something in the URL. For instance, this question mark is the symbol that says everything to the left of this question mark, everything to the left of that question mark is getting me to the right script or the right resource. Everything to the right of that question mark is parameters that I'm sending to that script to know how to work. So a question mark means something. The ampersand means something, and it gets confusing because ampersand means something in VBA. It also means something as part of the URL. So what I have is I have pairs of values. Name equals value. Ampersand, name equals value. And so the ampersand sets the difference between name-value pairs. The equal sign tells me the difference between the name and the value. And so these are specific characters, and we can't just drop an ampersand somewhere in here because it'll think, oh, here's the next parameter, it'll get confused. Just like the database server will get confused with it. It's got to be well formed. And so when we plug in something here between this equal sign and this ampersand, it's got to be encoded properly. If there's a space, it's got to be encoded to be handled the way a space should be handled. If there's a question mark, if there's an equal sign, if there's an ampersand, these all have to be encoded. The good news is, well, the bad news is, there's nothing built into VBA that will let you encode this. The good news is, smart people have written this and published it for us. So let's just Google for it. Come over here to Google. And I'll just do VBA, watch this, VBA, URL. I don't even have to get to the encode part. It knows what I'm looking for. If I said VBA URL, it means, oh, you mean URL encode. A lot of people have asked this question. I'm going to take a peek at the first one real quick. I used the second one in the last class. It worked just fine, but personally, this is probably okay too, but this other one's a little simpler. So I'm going to come to the second one and just Google VBA URL encode. Come to the second one, free VB code. And here's a nice little function that will encode a URL string, a URL. It's called URLEncode. I'm just going to copy this function and bring it over to my VBA code. And then right below my push Google to data, push data to Google, I'm going to paste that in code, URLEncode. So now I pass it a string, it passes me back a properly encoded string, like our prep SQL function did that we wrote. We sent it down something and looked at it and said, oh, you're going to use this as a parameter in SQL? We'll format it and send you back what you need. So my numbers, I don't have to encode. Numbers don't need to be encoded. If I'm comfortable that my code's going to give numbers there, that's fine. But the comments will definitely need to be encoded. And so, instead of just adding into this parameters the range itself, I will wrap around it, or we can do it in a separate statement. I'll do it in a separate statement. I'm going to say params sub 1 equals params, URL encode param sub 1. So up here, I put in the professor just as it was in the workbook. And now in a separate step, I'm saying encode that. At this point, I'm going to put a breakpoint here. And I'm just going to run this code so I can look at it. I'm going to give it something that needs to be encoded. So I'll do this. I will say Jim and K Stice. I'm reporting on both of them at the same time. Why? So I can have some different characters that need to be encoded. There's no reason that the form can't take that data, but I'll need to make sure that I've encoded it properly. It's all got encoded okay. What was the error? Object required. Params 1. I might not be able to just set the value in a collection as I thought I could. So, let me just take a different approach here. Instead of doing it here, I'm going to wrap my URL encode around when I'm actually adding it into the collection. So now if I look at params 1, it's been encoded. The space isn't allowed. The space is converted into a plus sign. The ampersand isn't allowed. The ampersand is converted into a %26. Space isn't allowed. Space isn't allowed. So it's taken that and it's properly prepared that to be the value of a parameter in a URL. Got it? Let me go ahead and do the same thing to the comments. And run that through. Comments did not get encoded, but I don't think they needed to be encoded here. I'm going to come back and look at the web page. And you should see that Jim and K Stice went through fine. And those, how come it doesn't show the plus signs and the %26? Because the web server looked at that and said, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you mean by that. You mean ampersand. Oh, that plus, you mean space. Just like a database server says, oh, those two quotes, I see what you mean, just one quote. Okay? So now we should be able to come here in Excel and say, you know, I want to be able to submit multiple things here, so put someone else in here. Larry, my next door neighbor, he retired not too long ago either. I can't remember his name. I can remember his mother-in-law's name, she just died. I can run this. So why would I, okay, so even if I'm executing this one by one, okay, is there a reason why I might do this in Excel rather than just do it on the web form? Pretty good reason that I might want to do this. If I'm here in Excel and a lot of the stuff has to stay the same, if I do another web form at Google, I got to go type that stuff in again. But here, if I got a bunch of stuff, you know what? And for these next 50 things that I'm entering, first part's the same, last 3 things are the same, I'm just changing the middle part. That would be really handy. Change what I need, submit. Change what I need, submit. Change what I need, submit. Second thing I could do is that maybe I've got a whole bunch of data kind of pre-entered, because it takes a while to actually wait for it to submit. Let me enter on multiple rows, and then hit submit. I can go away and get a ham sandwich. Well, it says submit this one, wait till it's done, submit this one, wait till it's done, submit this one, wait till it's done. There are real reasons why I want to do it just exactly like this. But here's another reason. Suppose that I have some kind of automated process. The data that I'm storing is data that I'm collecting. Some web page is going and looking at this, and it's looking at this, and gets some data, and I want to push it somewhere. I don't want to have to be involved in entering the data at all. I've written a program to enter the data, and I would like it to push to some Google sheet that I'm working on because I'm collaborating with other people. So that could be a really handy thing to do as well. Here's the problem with that approach, is that this has to be data that I'm willing to publish out there to a URL that has no protection on it. Now, just any old person couldn't just guess what that URL is. They can't even infer that URL, given that they know the form that I'm entering it through. But it's got to be there, actually, in terms of pulling the data down. That's the case. So, let's suppose I have some data that I want to put into a public place, but I don't want anyone to be able to read it. What do I do? You'd be surprised to find out who came up with this idea. Let's take a little trip through history. I want to shop Jefferson disk. Thomas Jefferson was Secretary of State for George Washington. He's going, I'm over here in Europe. National treasure. I'm over here in Europe, and I'm pretty sure these guys are reading my mail. Not the postman, but officials in France. He was the ambassador for France for a while. I'm not sure exactly what he did. He's the ambassador to France. I'm pretty sure these French guys are reading my mail. He had to come up with a way that he could transmit a message that folks had access to the message, could read and not be able to understand, and yet the recipient could understand it. And so he invented this device for doing private key encryption in the late 1700s. There are 26 wheels here. Each wheel has 26 letters on it in a random order. So what you do with this, you can't even really see the letters, but what you do with it is you dial up the message you want to transmit. So the letters you want to transmit, they go right across one row. You slide a wire through these holes that are here to kind of lock it in place. And then you spin that and you transmit any of the other 25 lines. The person who receives, and you can do that multiple times, the person who receives the message has an exact copy of this device, and he looks at what you transmitted, he dials that up, locks it, and then spins it until he finds the one line that makes sense. So this is called private key encryption. For this to work, the person who transmits the message and the person who receives the message have to have the same key. Well, it may be that for you, you're the person who transmits and receives. What I'm about to show you is that we can take this data, encrypt it in VBA, push it to Google Docs, let the world see it. Without the key, they can't understand it. And then, when I bring the data back down, just decrypt it using the same key. I've never transmitted the key, or if I've given it, if someone else has to share it, they have the key. It's a little inconvenient because I have to find a way to give them the key, but if it's a group that I work with, not a problem. Share the workbook with them, they've got the key. See how it works? So, instead of just putting these in as URL encoded, I'm not liking the fact that I can't change these. Editing this up. Good. Before I do the URL encoding, if we look down, I've got a procedure here called test encryption. I've put a class module in this project that I wrote called encryption. And it just does private key encryption. It's not rocket science. It's pretty straightforward. It would take some time for you to look at and follow the code that I'm doing. But I don't think I'm doing anything in this code that you don't. There's nothing special in this code that I haven't talked to you about. It uses procedures and variables and arrays and such. It's all here. So I'm going to run this. What does this do? It says, well, it creates a new instance of the object, the encryption object. It makes some key. This is the key that I specify. It can say anything I want it to say. I have an original string. I encrypt it. I decrypt that string back to the original, and then I print those three things. If I run this, it should print to Nephi serial in time, some encrypted thing, and then to Nephi serial in time again. But it will be the one that I encrypted and then decrypted that gets printed. So there's the original. That's what it looks like when it's encrypted. That's what it looks like after it's been decrypted. So, given this, instead of pushing this in clear text before I encode it, I can encrypt it. I'll go ahead and set up in E as a new encryption. We need a key. I'll make the key a constant at the module level. Const key equals. What did Franklin say today? I have lived for a long time. And the longer I live, etc., etc. It really doesn't matter what key you put in. It will use this key to encrypt and to decrypt. So I will then, whatever I'm going to push up here, I'm going to encrypt it. E.encrypt. Oops. And this is range prof. Second argument is the key, and then close. I'm not going to worry about encrypting the numbers because those numbers, without understanding that the other text around them, will be utterly meaningless. So leave the numbers the way they are. And so now when I run this, it will push up encrypted data. And of course, when I bring it back in, I just have to decrypt it. Let's go ahead and bring it in. There's not a procedure that brings the data in. That's just this one right here. And this will look a little strange because I'm part encrypted and part decrypted, right? This really, for this to work well, it needs to be all encrypted. But I've got this encrypted part here. I'll just decrypt it from the active cell. Div E as a new encryption. Debug.print. E.decrypt. Active cell.write. And the key. And so we can bring that back. And of course, if we had the whole thing encrypted, then after we import it, we would just say decrypt these two columns and probably just decrypt them in place. I don't need the old values hanging around. So just write a loop that scans through it and replaces it with a decrypted value. And so in terms of being able to work with Google Docs, to make this easy, we kind of have to make that data available out there on the public, not protected. And so it can still be easy if we push stuff up there but encrypt it. Then when we pull it back down, we can decrypt it. And although it's available, it's not comprehensive. Yes?
What does the key do on that?
So the question is, what does the key do? And so, just like if we think about the Jefferson disk cipher, is that these disks, there's two things about these disks. The letters are organized in a random order around the edges, and then the disks are organized in a random sequence. And so we need something to give us randomness that we can duplicate. And so that key is used inside the algorithm to generate a sequence that kind of feels random, that kind of scrambles things up, but that we can reverse using the same key.
You can put any string.
You can put any string you want. And it typically is just a random collection of characters. It can be anything. In fact, the nice thing about this approach to private key encryption is that you could somehow signal to someone what the key should be without even transmitting the key. You can just know the key for today is the first sentence of the newspaper in the second article. Type in that sentence character for character, and that way the key can change. It's out there in the public, but other folks don't know what it is, and they can't get it. Question?
When I try to run it, it highlights b.endprint and says its argument is not optional. And the sub person will get to
Do you have the key included?
that's what I have it.
You have it outside the parenthesis? Yeah, that's how it is. Oh, this is the first day I have ever taught how to do these kind of tricks with Google Docs. So tell me, what do you think? Are you looking at this thinking, I don't think I'm ever going to use this in my whole life? What are you saying that? How many are going, there might be a way for me to use this somehow? That's probably, if I could get 50-50 on almost anything that I teach, I feel pretty good about it. Because, this stuff I'm probably never going to use. Go ahead.
There's kind of some VBA with Google Sheets.
What's that?
Google Sheets.
Oh, is there like VBA built-in Google Sheets?
Yeah.
Yes, it's called GAS. Google Application Script.
It's different ways.
It's not VBA, but same idea. Yeah, there are things that you can, if you're thinking, I'm going to live in Google Sheets, then you might want to think about getting a book on GAS and doing, I think probably in the next few years, not that kind of GAS, but Google Apps Script. I may start either adding some of that into this class or teaching another class just on it. Yep.
So we're populating Google Sheets through a
Google Letter.
We're populating the sheets through a Google form, right?
Right.
We're pushing it in the URL. Is there a way to just push data directly to
Straight to the sheet without going through a form. Yes, there is, but to do that, you need to use, there's a whole API for working with Google Sheets. And so, yeah, it's really complex. You need to be authenticated to do it. Even the authentication is difficult in VBA. But people have written stuff to make it possible. So, yeah, it's all possible, but it's beyond what we can do in one day for sure. Yep.
Is GAS not, is it limited compared to VBA, or is it very similar and you can do pretty much anything VBA can do, or is it?
Yeah, it's more limited than VBA. VBA is more powerful than Google Apps Script. But Google Apps Script is pretty young, and they're developing it.
Yeah.
Are they developing VBA still? Not really. So VBA is kind of a sitting target right now, and Google Apps Script is coming on. There are neat things you can do with Google Apps Script. The problem with Google Apps Script and why they've got to be a little bit careful about it is because all of that processing is happening, on Google servers. We do this here. We can do anything crazy we want to with this script. It's my computer that takes the abuse. We do something crazy in the cloud, and Google's got millions upon millions of people writing really bad code. That could be a problem. See what I'm saying? So they've got to be a little more controlled. Other questions? All right, folks. Thanks for coming. Remember, final exam will be available on the last day of class. I'll send out an email. Class dismissed.